So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work we're doing at Tulane on the water challenge. I'm going to provide a little bit of context about why Tulane, but I'm more interested in a conversation, and hopefully somebody in this audience has the big idea that if you can prove it in the real world within the next 2 or 3 years, we'll happily hand you a check for $1 million. So the challenge is hypoxia, and I think there's been some presentations about the dead zones that occur in the Gulf of Mexico. They appear in many other places across the world as well. The Chesapeake Bay has the same problem as well. It's a huge challenge, and we wanted to do something about it. So I think maybe the best way to get started is to provide a little bit of an introduction through a very brief, just 2-minute video about what the Water Prize is all about. So, if you could.
The Mississippi River, father of waters, discharges at its mouth about 900 billion cubic yards annually. With this little trickle in Lake Itasca, it begins its long trek to the sea. Think of it. A cup of water picked up here is abruptly checked on a journey of 2,546 miles to the Gulf of Mexico, which it has just begun.
This is an American river. It's not a Louisiana river or an upstream river. And it's going to require the benefits be looked at in a national way, and the solutions have to be looked at in a national way.
I fished pretty much all my life. My grandfather was a fisherman all his life. When we fish in the dead zone or around the dead zone, you just can't catch nothing. You have to go somewhere else. And I'm talking about miles and miles and miles.
The Mississippi River is the main drainage for 33 states and parts of Canada and the heartland of America. That water then comes down very quickly and goes out into the Gulf of Mexico.
The outcome is an area that can range from about 6,500 square miles to the size of New Jersey, which is about 8,500 square miles in the Gulf of Mexico, where there's effectively little to no oxygen in the water. We're challenging scientists and researchers to focus on the source of the concern. And in the Mississippi River Basin, the predominant driver is thought to be excess fertilizer entry into receiving waters. So focusing on the source means going to the fields, going to the farms, going to agricultural operations across the Mississippi River Basin and affecting change.
We expect to receive ideas from across the world. It could be traditional researchers at research universities who figured out new ways to address hypoxia.
We are interrelated, we're connected. We have responsibilities to think about what the impact is on others.
Bold action, effective action, happens when you engage the creative forces and the opportunities that the market really is ideally suited to inspire.
Tulane is poised to find innovative and entrepreneurial solutions to a problem like hypoxia in the Gulf.
So that's where we've landed with the Tulane Grand Challenge. Let me tell you how this all began for us. This is very much in the spirit of entrepreneurship, similar to what many of you are here for this week with NOE, and certainly what Idea Village has been about for many years. And the idea is, how do you in fact catalyze great breakthrough innovations, particularly when you don't have yet the kind of market forces that are necessary to create big changes. The theory is that if the market can take care of it, it will, but very often there are challenges, problems, issues that for a variety of reasons, there's not yet a simple, clear market solution, and you need to figure out some way to incentivize people to go out there and invent great big solutions for this. So for Tulane, this all began close to 3 years ago when, as we were developing our social innovation programs, and we're doing things that universities traditionally do when you do that, building undergraduate programs in social innovation, bringing on great research to do the work, we had a donor that came to us and said, you know, I've heard about the X Prize. Who here has heard about the X Prize and the X Prize competitions that go on? So most of you, not everybody. The idea is that you create these incentive prizes which rewards people not for having big ideas, not just for having a notion of what to do it, but actually going out and building and proving and testing and crossing the finish line of a competition with an innovation that's going to have a big change. One of the most famous innovation prizes was whoever crosses the Atlantic first in a single engine airplane would win a lot of money, and famously Charles Lindbergh did that. There was lots of competitors to do it who didn't win the prize, who didn't make it, but he won that prize. Currently, the X Prize is running a competition for somebody to build the first commercially viable 100-mile-per-gallon car, and there's lots of teams that are competing for it. But our donor came to us and said, you know, I think there's a particular role for universities to run these kind of competitions. I'd like Tulane, because I'm a graduate and a supporter, to think about taking up this challenge. So we did. We started with an incredibly broad funnel, thanks to the vision of the donor, that it could be an innovation to solve any social problem. The only constraints were it had to be audacious but doable. It had to have some impact on New Orleans. And it had to create some kind of new innovation that, if successful, could be taken to scale. We looked at many different things, quickly narrowing it down to the environment, then even more specifically realizing that water was the opportunity and something that was emblematic of New Orleans. And then finally, in a lot of conversations with folks, realized that the hypoxic problem, the dead zones that are resulting, was something that a lot of people across the country were concerned with. Lots of folks were working at, but there was a need to somehow catalyze those efforts through a competition that would reward somebody who would have a breakthrough innovation. As you've heard, lots of folks are working on this, and there's a general recognition that this is a challenge. But this is a classic case where a prize might be the right solution, because in fact you have a conflict that occurs between competing interests, not atypical in the world, but we have this challenge. There's a lot of hungry folks in the world. There's a growing population in the world. We need to feed more and more people in the world. The way we do that significantly is by increasing the amount of land where food is grown, and by putting on an increasing amount of nitrogen onto that land so that there's higher yields as a result of that land now being put into agricultural production. So that's typically a good thing, but there's unintended or even consequences that we're aware of that up until recently had been treated as a necessary evil of the process. And that's the nutrients run off, they go into the river, just as you heard from the two secretaries of agriculture upstream in Iowa and down here in New Orleans. You get these huge dead zones, hypoxic zones that occur that are devastating to the local communities. This is going to be particularly an issue for our area as a result of the fact that we're going to be going through a coastal restoration process recently in the near future, and diverting the water into new areas is going to cause new problems if the nitrogen in that water has unintended consequences. So that's why we created the prize, and now we're fully into it. And we are going to award a winning team of competitors from throughout the world who come up with a scientific, technological breakthrough, not just as an idea, but as something proven in the field that works to solve the amount of nitrogen that's flowing into the water. We've got lots of details on our website, Tulane Water Prize, and you can go take a look at that, and there's lots of information there. But I know we've got a very large panel, and I'd love to save some time for others on the panel to speak as well. So let me stop there.
So it's really, after hearing from PJ and the work that Coca-Cola is doing, and seeing the work that's happening here at Tulane, these synergies that are happening all up and down the river now, one of the greatest beneficiaries of all this is going to be us down here. So this is also exciting. As I started to say earlier, it's a Water Challenge tradition to get an update from the Water Institute of the Gulf, which is just an incredible institution that is growing and that we are looking to be a leader on so many of these issues. Dr. Chip Groat who has had an illustrious career with the United States Geological Survey, with the Louisiana Department of Natural Resources, and academia, is a true leader, and he really weaves the people side of this into the work they do. You know, they really focus on applied research, but they also apply that research in the context of the rich cultural fabric of Louisiana. And we all have very high hopes for this program, but they've had an incredible year. They have a lot of good news to share with us this year. So, Chip Groat.
Steve, thank you. We just turned 2 February 1st, so we are, in fact, still in the process of letting some people know who we are, and I would think with a name like the Water Institute of the Gulf that our matchup with this day of water opportunities, water challenges would be a natural. So I will give you a little bit of an update, and then I'll tell you a little bit very briefly about how we're getting more and more into water as water. Our principal activity of late has been focused on the things illustrated in this diagram here, and if you look at the center part, you see coasts and deltas, coastal communities, and the fact that we are coastally oriented, and we're best known in the 2 years we've been in existence in the work we do with the Mississippi River, the Delta, and the coast related to land loss related to the master plan. And as an independent 501c3 organization committed to applied research, we've been supportive of, through contracts and task orders, the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority as they implement the 2012 master plan. So that's really what has amounted to the work plan for the Water Institute of the Gulf over the past couple of years. But in the background, we do think about water in a broader context. But when we think about the coast, the delta, or water, we are really committed, as Steve indicated, of turning knowledge into action as it affects not only technical projects and engineering that goes into putting these 2012 master plan projects in place, but the people, the humans who are affected by and who are the beneficiaries of these various projects. So we've tried to develop a strong human dimensions program that translates applied research results into kinds of information that they find useful themselves. And finally, partnerships, and I think this has been emphasized by the previous speakers here. It's important to the Water Institute because if we don't work effectively with universities, with the private sector, with NGOs, with all those people who care about and are affected by what we do in our river basin and in our coastal plain, then we're not carrying out what those who put us together originally envisioned us as being capable of doing. The best example in the form of an update of partnerships is the Center of Excellence under the Restore Act, in which each state was given the opportunity to put an applied research organization together that will be funded from BP penalties. Louisiana's RFP was responded to by the Water Institute in partnership and in collaboration with the research universities in the state, and we were successful. So we will think we'll be benefiting the coastal area, the coastal entourage of interested parties, not just as the Water Institute, but with strong collaborative work with the university system in the state, which has contributed so much to our understanding of coastal areas in general. We are really interested in an integrated approach. I think that's one of the things we do bring to the table. We are not put together in such a way, while we do have programmatic separations, we're not put together in such a way where they function independently. So as we've worked in the Delta Plain and the coast, we've worked in areas where the physical processes, the modeling and monitoring, the coastal systems and engineering design are all components that work with one another as we support CPRA and its master plan implementation. The new dimension for us, and the one I'll work my way through here very, very shortly, is the water policy, the policy research area. We have said we're not a policy organization in that we try to create policy and we try to force policy down anyone's throat, but we do recognize there is a policy dimension to all of these things. And policy is formidable and as challenging and as rewarding a place for research as is science, as is engineering. So what can we contribute if we're going to be truly integrated? in the area of policy understandings that are necessary when you implement coastal protection and restoration projects. But as we think to the future, and we play on our title as a water institute, can we be a player in dealing with our colleagues at Tulane, Mark Davis, who you saw in that video, our colleagues at the LSU Sea Grant in Baton Rouge, and others who think about the legal and policy ramifications of our use of water and the opportunities we have there. So playing on what Steve mentioned and what, again, has been a theme here, as we do innovative sorts of things, as we try through our innovative program that we carry on for CPRA, and as we look at applied research, it is affected by and affects a large number of parties across the spectrum of the coast and across the spectrum of organization types. And this is where we really feel that we need to be a strong player in working with everyone who is interested, no matter what their background is. And it's something that takes work and it takes a commitment. And as Grasshopper and Steve know, and the work they try to do, that you're always working to bring people together. And when you see willing partnerships form, you're very excited and very happy. And I think we've had some successes here and plan to have more of them. So let me wrap up by talking about water and the water institutes. You know, Louisiana, the tradition is kind of we have too much water and the big job is to get it out so it doesn't cause us problems with our floods and so forth. And I think historically that's been the case in New Orleans, but look at the turnaround here in the innovation that you all are bringing to thinking about water, keeping it in the city in constructive sorts of ways and not just automatically pumping it out. So how do you treat it as a resource, not just as an aggravant in some cases? Well, Louisiana needs to think about water as a resource, as an economic incentive. We, having come back to Louisiana from several years in Texas and watched Texas dry out, and look at eastward to East Louisiana for its water, you recognize how valuable this resource is to our state and our economy, whether it's the industrial sector or whether it's the agricultural or whatever it is. We don't play that up very much, and we don't take it to the advantage that it could be taken in promoting the state. But that's not to say we don't have any water challenges. We do. There are issues in the central part of the capital area where the use of groundwater and surface water and who uses what has been discussed. The agricultural use in the southwestern part of the state, shale gas related use in the northwestern part of the state, all affect our water resources and how we use them. And are we going to be smart in how we manage conflict where it exists and how we weigh different technical factors as we think about managing water resources? And the state has a new challenge with the Water Resources Commission being charged to come up with a comprehensive water management program for both surface and groundwater. Well, how does that affect the Water Institute of the Gulf? Well, as we do in the coastal area, as we do natural systems modeling, as we do applied research, as we do human dimensions, as we do ecosystem things, can we provide the same kind of technical input to the formulation of a wise water resources management plan that has been put in, and certainly not just by us, but as we are trying to be a player with the Coastal Protection and Restoration Program. So we're exploring opportunities in Louisiana with those agencies responsible for developing a comprehensive water management program to provide that kind of support and expertise technically and in the human dimensions area as well. And in the policy area that I mentioned before, we've just employed effective April 1st, Kai Midbo, who was spent years as DEQ Secretary in Louisiana, Deputy Secretary of DNR, who is a natural resource legal policy person and is just chomping at the bit to get back into the policy research area that he was prominent in his legal career. So we're building the policy side as well as the technical side as we deal with water resources. The other thing we're doing, just in the form of an update, is our founders said the Water Institute of the Gulf is important to Louisiana, it's important to the Gulf of Mexico, but if it's going to export expertise that it and its partners have, it needs to think beyond the borders of Louisiana and the U.S. And we are currently looking at opportunities in the Mekong Delta area, in Myanmar, in the rivers over there. So we do have the kind of talent in our organization and the partnerships we have with the universities and the private sector that are exportable and that take those commodities of turning knowledge into action into other parts of the world where it's valued as well. And let me finally close. Water is in another name of a structure besides the Water Institute of the Gulf in Baton Rouge, and that's the Water Campus, which was announced some time ago. An effort, again, to bring collaboration by bringing people together who are interested in coastal waters, water in general, and that thing sticking out into the Mississippi River is us, which we will select a design architect this week to build that facility. So there will be a water community in Baton Rouge that is a collaborative effort among many kinds of organizations who find synergies of working together and the opportunity to be creative as valuable as you all see it by sponsoring this day of water challenges here in New Orleans. So with that, I'll close and pass it on to Avalyn.
Chip, you are like so professional. 10 minutes exists in your framework of presenting like nobody I've ever seen. That was amazing. And it was amazing news. It was encouraging news. I know you weren't here this morning to hear what we were talking about, but what you just said is almost like a culmination of so many of the things that we've been discussing all day today. So it's great that you've been able to come in here and put a big punctuation mark on some sentences that we've been composing throughout this Water Challenge Day. Next, I want to introduce Avalyn Taylor. Avalyn's an attorney with the Nature Conservancy. She serves as External Affairs Associate for the Gulf of Mexico. She's working on a whole lot of issues relating to the BP oil spill and trying to make sure that everything is directed towards coastal restoration as much as you can in a system like that. My goodness, it's got to be a big job. But she also worked with the Water Institute. They had a round table convening over at G&O Inc. We were honored to be a part of it and to share our thoughts. There were business people there were academics there, and it was all about innovation and how we can really do what we like to call, cultivate that culture of innovation around here, and particularly around all these issues. So Avalyn's going to talk to us, give us an update on some of the findings, and discuss this. Thank you, Avalyn.
Thanks, Steve. And if anybody from the Louisiana State Bar is in attendance, I'm actually not licensed to practice law in Louisiana, so I haven't subjected myself to the Louisiana bar exam. But I'm really honored to be here today. This has been a really great meeting so far. I've been at past water challenges and have been honored to work with many previous Water Institute or Water Challenge winners. I see Sarah Mack there and Webster Pierce, last year's winners, and also competitors. And it's just an amazing event, and I really commend Grasshopper and Steve for being the driving force behind such a great day. And I'm also really honored to share the stage with these two distinguished gentlemen. Rick might not know, or I'm sure you don't know, that I actually credit my very existence to Tulane because that's where my parents met. And Chip, or Dr. Groat, I came down from Oregon after being away from my home state of Louisiana for about 15 years to work for the state of Louisiana and the Governor's Office of Coastal Activities over 3 years ago, and was involved in conversations at the very origin of the Water Institute, or I was at the peripheral of those conversations, and it's just been so satisfying to see what an amazing team they've assembled and the leadership under Dr. Groat. So really excited to see the next stage in the water campus, and looking forward to getting out on that floating building on the river. So what I'm here to talk to you about is an event and an effort that the Nature Conservancy has been part of for about the last year, and I feel that I'm sort of an accidental spokesperson for this effort, but I'm very honored to be the spokesperson. The origin of this Coastal Innovation Roundtable actually came from a conversation that I had with one of today's competitors, Tyler Ortego, who I think is going to be giving his pitch in a few minutes. And we were at another meeting several years ago, and I was asking him about what it's like to actually be an entrepreneur of a coastal restoration technology in Louisiana and what kind of resources were available for businesses like his that were doing things like filing patents and, really testing their technologies and trying to get them taken up by various end users of those technologies. And based on that conversation, the idea sort of emerged to have a gathering of various folks that are involved in innovation in Louisiana, mainly from the business perspective and then also the academic research perspective. The Nature Conservancy, I'm really glad that we've been able to partner with many of the organizations here today, and was really fortunate to sit next to PJ and his colleague at Luke at the bar at lunch. And we discovered that, we had been working organizationally on these projects together that PJ talked about in his great presentation. But one of the roles that we see ourselves is as a convener, as a nonprofit. And although we realize that often we raise more questions than answers, we really appreciate being able to bring together various folks who are engaged in these efforts. So that's what we did with this Coastal Innovation Roundtable, and we worked with these other entities whose logos are on the screen, many of whom are in the room, including the Water Institute and Tulane and GNO Inc. and LSU. So the goals of this meeting and overall effort were twofold. One, to really analyze in greater detail this issue of how do we work to seize on this opportunity that we have right now in Louisiana and make ourselves a world leader in developing and ultimately exporting innovative coastal technologies. And then the second was to identify different ways to support the use and advancement of innovation in the implementation of the master plan. As y'all know, the 2012 master plan has been really heralded nationwide and worldwide as a significant step forward, and the solutions that we need to reverse the trend of decline of Louisiana's coast. And there will be an update in 2017, and all of the participants and sponsors of this event felt that this is a huge opportunity to advance innovation in Louisiana. So the actual process for this roundtable was actually 2 roundtables, and the steering committee, which is the organizations that were on the previous slide, felt that it would be a good idea to convene businesses, both people like Tyler who have innovative products, and then also engineering companies and contractors that use these innovations, and then academics in 2 separate sessions. And of course, hindsight's kind of 2020. One of the main points that came out of this session that I'll get to is that we're too siloed. So after the fact, we realized, it probably would have been good to have one separate conversation, but we really did want to drill down into the issues that were unique to those interests. And so those are some of the people that were there. We had in the academic session all of the major universities in Louisiana in attendance. And Nick Spire, who's here in the audience, facilitated both meetings, and they were intended to really draw out from these participants what some key recommendations to accomplish the goals I stated before are. We developed 6 recommendations, and I have to say that they're preliminary findings because the white paper that I have long been promising that is currently on my computer has not yet been finalized, but will be this spring. So I only have a chance to really brush on these, but we will be getting into significant more detail in this white paper. The first is to really take care of what we have, and if possible, increase funding and expand these key efforts that you've heard about today, including demonstration programs that enable entrepreneurs and innovators to conduct that critical field testing on their products and ultimately have them taken up by those end users. The Water Institute's Coastal Innovation Partnership Program and Applied Research Program, and I'm sure Chip or Nick can talk to you more about those programs, but they're really outstanding opportunities, and I think programs that many of the people in this room are aware of. Competitions such as the Grand Challenge that was recently announced by Tulane. There's also a really interesting competition happening right now called Changing Course. that is looking at ways to redesign the lower Mississippi River. And there's a number of different, of today's competition, a number of different efforts that the participants in our roundtable felt were key. And then continue with grants and research funding. So this was probably the biggest recommendation to come out of this roundtable, and it's something that I know was discussed somewhat this morning, but the participants in both sessions felt that it was very important to have an umbrella entity to help coalesce these various efforts around innovation in Louisiana. One of the key functions that participants felt that this entity should fulfill is that critical guidance function to innovators to help move their products along the innovation pipeline, and also to serve as a conduit between entities like CPRA or the Army Corps of Engineers and those who are developing the innovations. And so this next recommendation relates to that. One of the key recommendations that was made was for these end users of innovation, whether they're government or industry, to provide, to the extent that they are able to, more information about what kind of research questions they're looking for innovators to help answer. And the point was also made, you know, by putting out some sort of research needs agenda, the danger exists that that could ultimately stifle innovation, because obviously you don't want to be too prescriptive. But at the same time, folks felt that if there was a better idea of what kind of research questions that these engineers or you know, folks that work for the various entities are thinking about, the innovators could better meet those needs. So the fourth is sort of the policy and incentive piece. And, you know, some of the participants who have taken advantage of various demonstration programs felt that these programs could be modified to be better in sync with the needs of innovators for things like timing, the level of sort of red tape involved in taking advantage of these programs. And the second is actually, you know, developing some sort of pots of money that would have innovation be a criteria for a project. So, for example, having an RFP for projects include a question about to what nature or to what extent is your project, you know, innovative. The fifth actually came from most of the academic folks who attended the roundtable, and there was a strong sentiment expressed that in some cases academic cultures could better support innovation. The whole idea of rewarding failure, not so directly tying funding and positions to success, commercial success, and allowing that innovation to more freely happen. And also the idea of interdisciplinary approaches was very important, and including social sciences. So the final one is, you know, sort of the broad collaborate and work to break down silos. And one thing that the white paper will highlight is examples of what we think are successful sort of cross-sector collaborations that have occurred, you know, industry partnering with academia to apply for a grant to work on a particular innovation. I didn't say before, but one of the reasons why the Nature Conservancy is even in this conversation is because on our projects, we try to utilize innovative technologies so that those folks who are developing the technologies can help do field testing at a smaller scale. So we're really excited to be part of this dialogue. We plan to, as I said, release a white paper in the spring. And we also want to hold a follow-up event, or are planning on holding a follow-up event this summer to drill down on some of the issues we identified. So for more information, you're welcome to contact me. I didn't want to put a picture of myself, so I put this picture of one of my colleagues who's actually gets to do a lot more field work than me, but unfortunately, I'm usually behind a desk and on the phone, so I should be available if you try to contact me. Thank you.
So thank you all for these updates. I think what you're seeing here is things are coalescing. You know, we look out and we always want to see ourselves further down the road, and it's hard because you're on the road and the road's still there, and you want to be where you think everybody else is. But I think what we're learning, and as we all do this work and the research we're doing and the people that have come here to share their stories with us, is that we're not really behind anybody on a lot of these issues. And I think the work that all three of you are doing validates that in ways that a lot of people need to know. Like you said when you started this conversation, Chip, a lot of people don't know this stuff. But we hope that through participating in this, more people know about this, that we look at ourselves as more successful than we often recognize that we are in doing all this kind of work, and that as we move forward with purpose, a desire to break down those silos, a desire to find the way to fund that innovation and to create that culture of innovation, interdisciplinary, intergenerational, across every system of this state. It is possible. It can be done. And I think y'all are doing great work, and I want to thank you for participating today. Let's give them another round of applause. These people do really, really great work.